The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Wednesday, the 15th of October, 2025. We are live here at CHD TV. We have an action-packed show for you today. So we're going to start off in a minute talking about measles in Israel. And I just want to say also that we do have our own scientific team working on more information. You'll be hearing more about that on Friday. Then we are going to hear about the Australian Vaxxed bus. Very exciting. And then our Miriam, Eckenfels and Scott McCollough will be taking the second half of the show, talking about the very important wireless digital prison that we're all going into. Right. Let's start off talking about measles in Israel. So something is very fishy here, for sure. I'm going to read a couple of these headlines for you. Over 1,700 cases of measles diagnosed in Israel. We have a few others coming up. 437 hospitalized with measles, 39 in ICUs amid outbreak that started in May. Health Ministry says unvaccinated 18-month-old dies of measles. Unvaccinated 2-year-old dies amid Israel's measles outbreak. Of course, they're encouraging vaccines. The tragedy continues. 7th Jerusalem baby dies from measles. And it goes on as well. I think there's also an amputation situation. That 11-month-old baby faces amputation after severe measles complications. Something is not right here. I'm going to just put that right out there, having just gone through the whole Mennonite community measles. And we discovered there was a measles hospital protocol. These kids were not dying from measles, but they were dying in hospital. That is a fact. So I thought, well, who do I know in Israel? Well, of course, we know Jessica Rose, Dr. Jessica Rose. Welcome to the show this morning.
Hi, guys.
Just to tell everyone, Jessica Rose will be at our conference in November. Very, very excited to see you there, Jessica. So Jessica, this is what I'm thinking, and there's the conference, of course. Here's what I'm thinking. I feel like I'm kind of an expert on this right now, having gone through this, going on the bus, listening to the hospital COVID protocols, and then we're on to the measles thing. And then we just see this coming at us really, really fast. To remind everybody, when I was a child, you were encouraged to go and catch measles, and nobody had their arms and legs amputated. Nobody died of measles, and certainly not where we were living. We were not vaccinated against measles either. It was a mild childhood illness. What in the name of Jesus is going on, Jessica?
I really don't know. And like we were saying before, it makes me mad that I don't, that A, I don't know, and B, I don't believe anything anymore that I'm reading. I'm not there. I'm not experiencing it. So seeing is believing, but I'm not seeing. So I don't have any doubt that there might be some measles cases on the go. There have been 6 deaths in very young people, which is, it seems kind of like, I don't know what to make of it because, according to what I've read, there's no new strain. Also, according to what I've read, there's a lot of stress, like you said, on ensuring that you get vaccinated. And we're talking about primarily the populations in Israel we're talking about are the Orthodox Jewish communities, which, I mean, maybe they're not vaccinating as much. But it also kind of raises some questions for me internally, like pertaining to whether or not certain populations are getting targeted. Like the Amish have been targeted as well. Like you have to do this because if you don't vaccinate, everyone's gonna die. So I hate sounding like that, and I hate sounding unsure, but the fact is that I'm not, and I don't really, after what I've witnessed and still witness, after the past 5 years all over the world, you know, believe most of what I read. So
Well,
the
I just want to say one thing. Okay, this is to me what doesn't add up. So maybe you can help me on this. So I've seen a ton of unvaccinated children, and they are so super healthy. And so why are they making this big thing about unvaccinated children who catch measles are dying?
Well,
Well,
that's exactly what I'm saying. It's
right.
it's these keywords that I'm seeing in the write-ups and the articles, and it looks. I'm sorry, I have to say this, but it looks kind of scare tactic-y, like we've seen before recently. And the problem with that is, if there actually is a problem, and this is the part that pisses me off as a biologist. We might blow it off because we just don't believe them anymore, because we think that they're just pushing a vaccine agenda. Now, having said that, it is kind of weird. There are 24 hospitalizations right now, or there might be more. My most recent statistic that I looked at was that there were 24 babies in hospital. Apparently, they threw in that they're all unvaccinated, yes. So I don't know much about measles, but I do know that there's good research looking into treatment using high dose vitamin A. Josh Getsko is in Israel, and he's been talking about this forever, or for a long time. And that could be, very much an effective treatment, just like high dose vitamin C, or maintaining good levels of vitamin A, C, and especially D to optimize your immune system might be a much better course than what might be being done in hospital setting. I don't really dig hospitals, never have. Now I don't trust them because they're kind of machines that operate according to protocols, and it's not really up to the doctors and nurses what to do. They can't make independent decisions at large institutions. They have to follow these protocols, and if it's the wrong protocol, like the vent, what was that one called that does your kidneys in? Yeah, thank you. Run, death is near. That that's terrible. I mean, that'll kill you. It'll kill your kidneys and then you're dead. I mean, it was an awful idea, but that was the protocol if you ended up in the hospital in Israel with COVID. So that concerns me, because we're talking about babies here, and like you said, I mean, measles has always kind of been one of these things that you just get and get over, and like chickenpox. And I wonder how long, there might be a raging chickenpox outbreak. It's like, I hate being like that, and I hate being sarcastic about it, because we are talking about, infants dying, which is tragic. But the real solution, if we do have an actual problem, I think can be approached, especially if the parents have already decided not to vaccinate, with treatments and supplements that actually will prevent any kind of serious adverse event, or I'm sorry, a serious outcome. So yeah, I mean,
Well,
that seems like the most sensible thing I could say.
Well, honestly, truthfully, viewers, I don't believe 1 second that an unvaccinated child has died from measles. This is ridiculous, ridiculous. And also, you've got to remember what they call unvaccinated. So if you've got a baby that's not up to date on their vaccines, they're called unvaccinated. So it is me, this is a massive fear-mongering, horrific lie to make you all go and get your vaccines. Now, if children really have died, as you said, that is absolutely tragic. But where I'm going with this is, did they die at home? No, they died in hospital.
Yeah,
We've
that's what that's exactly what I'm saying. That's about the hospital protocols, because like they can they literally just follow, a dialogue, and if a secondary bacterial infection cuts in, which is usually why you might have problem with measles. Like Pure Core, you can explain this better than anyone. It's not measles that kills you. It's a secondary pneumonia or bacterial infection. And if they withhold antibiotics or misdiagnose because they're like, oh, it's measles. I don't know how they do it, but if they did that, there could be a chance of death, and then they would label it a measles death when in fact it was not. And it definitely wasn't because they weren't vaccinated. So one more thing about Israel is because I know that in the States, they've opted to go for single use or single product vaccines, so separating out the MMR to the measles, mumps, and rubella. But for now, in Israel, it's the MMR, the triple shot thing, which I do know a little bit about, thanks to Andrew Wakefield, especially giving it to very, very young babies. It can lead to very serious outcomes in terms of adverse events. So I can really understand why the parents like are opting not to vaccinate if they choose to, and I don't think that that should lead to death of a child at all. I agree with you.
Yeah, and just to say to everyone, we have done stories on people who have had the single measles shot, and there's been horrific complications from that. So I am not an advocate of any vaccines whatsoever after what happened to my child and what you, the people, have told us what happened to your children. So there's just no way an unvaccinated, healthy child, a real true unvaccinated child that will die from the measles that we used to have. So I have a ton of questions. I know there's something much more sinister going on here, well, in Israel, and I think it's disgusting. And we will get to the bottom of it. I know that our science team are working on some more to come on that on Friday, live with Brian Hooker on what he's discovered and what's going on. Now, Jessica, while I've still got you, what else are you working on? What else have you discovered?
Well, I found something kind of scary yesterday. Kevin McKernan has recently written a subsequent preprint about a new finding that he found about the type of E. coli that were used in the plasmid E. coli prep to make the nucleoside modified mRNA for the COVID shots. Turns out that probably wasn't the best strain of E. coli that they could have selected because there are problems associated with it. I won't get into detail, but it got me thinking about this whole DNA issue. If you guys aren't aware, we published our work finally in autoimmunity. It's a big deal because we tested a lot of vials. All of them had DNA. You know, we've been told for years that integration isn't going to be a problem, that, you know, foreign DNA fragments aren't a big deal, blah, blah, blah. So we found not only DNA in all the vials, but a lot of DNA in all the vials, and over the alleged EMA limits, which are already too high because they rely on naked DNA assessments and not the lipid nanoparticle encapsulated DNA assessment. So the reason I'm saying all of this is because one of the DNA fragments we found is called SV40 promoter enhancer, which is a strong mammalian promoter, which it and all the other DNA fragments, just their presence can induce all sorts of problems that basically all lead to cancer. Okay, I'll just put it that way. So I started thinking about gene mutations. Like I went for a long shot. I look at VAERS data. I was like, I wonder about any long shot if there are any reports of specific gene mutations in VAERS. And I was expecting to find nothing, but I didn't find nothing. And I'm not saying that there's a causal link. What I'm looking for is evidence to generate hypotheses, because the dealio is that the presence of SV40 in particular can cause genomic instability. Insertions can occur. Gene defects can be anticipated if you're talking about inserting a cell with billions of fragments of foreign DNA. You're talking about the potential for epigenetic modifications happening. This is also something that Kevin discussed in his preprint in terms of methylation patterns. You can read about that. So the bottom line is that so read my Substack, okay? There are some questions that everybody kind of needs to answer that I've asked in that Substack pertaining to first of all, one of my biggest questions is why the hell are they testing for these gene mutations in the first place? I mean, why are there CDC tags instead of like you'll read my article and you'll know what I'm talking about. Instead of a vax lot being listed in the vax lot variable, there's like a CDC number affiliated with it. And from my reading, I learned, because I'd never seen this before. I've been looking at VAERS for 5 years. I never saw this before. And I noticed it because I was doing this deep dive. And it means that CDC is following these cases. I don't know why. I have no idea, but it's worth looking into because it could be that these people were special cases. They could have gotten specific lots. Maybe they were following them because they were suspecting weird shit to happen. So it begs questions. I'm not making claims. I'm just saying, like, there's something weird going on here. In the history of VAERS, there hasn't been one single report of a gene mutation ever, period. Not in 30 years. And now there are a whole whack, and there are multiple reports for the same gene mutation. And some of these are exclusively not hereditary. You know what I mean? So it's like we're not necessarily talking about anyway. Read the article.
Is this just in mRNA shots, or are we talking about Johnson Johnson, AstraZeneca as well?
No, this is only Pfizer and Moderna.
Okay, but have you looked at the others? I'm just concerned about the other shots as well. We talk so much about the mRNA, as we should, and so people are like, oh well, I'll just get a Johnson Johnson, or well, you can't get.
No, none of them are a good idea because they all involve, this spike thing. I'll look it up. Yeah, all of these reports are in association with Pfizer and Moderna, primarily Pfizer, which does beg the question, is this the SV40 at work? But maybe not, because the Moderna vials don't have SV40 that we know of. But I will check. But yeah, no, this isn't a scapegoat for like, yeah, just go out and get these other things. I mean, I think that the whole COVID thing is a scam, a total scam. Like you have to, going back to what we were just talking about with the measles thing, you have to optimize your immune system. You have to eat, you have to nourish your body. You have to use common sense. You have to, you just have to optimize your health in the way that the human immune system requires. Natural immunity is always going to be the best. I'm just never not going to say that. I'm not against inoculation for people who want it, who choose it, because, if you do get inoculated against something that might make you raging sick, it might prevent you from actually getting raging sick. However, it's kind of irrelevant because it does. I don't agree with all this public health epidemiological stuff about herd immunity and shit. I understand the concept, but you cannot take away somebody's right to choose. And that's also problematic now because, I mean, the world is, from my point of view, it's completely split on not just the COVID vaccine dialogue, but the vaccine dialogue, and they're all like whining about vaccine hesitancy now, but it's like, you guys caused it with all your stupid lies and coercion and manipulation, and like it's it didn't have to be this way. You just had to be honest. I'm a a diligent promoter of truth, good science, real science, optimizing not just human health, but environmental health, eco health, and I shouldn't say eco-health. It reminds me of Eco-Health Alliance, but ecological health. So yeah, there are much going back to the measles thing again that I alluded to. There are much better ways to prevent yourself from dying than, injecting yourself with crap, especially when you're a baby. That's what I think.
Well, Jessica Rose, it's been fantastic having you on. Everybody go to jessicar.substack.com and follow. Well, she doesn't write as complicated as she sounds sometimes. So she writes in an easier way for you to understand. So go to her Substack and learn. And that's what I do. We learn from Jessica Rose. Jessica, I can't wait to see you at the conference. Thank you for your insight into the measles in Israel and for all that you do. And we'll see you soon.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be great.
I'll see you then. All right, thank you for being on. Okay, we're going to go to Rosemary Marshall in Australia, and it's very early in the morning for you. Thank you for being here so early. Good morning, Rosemary.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm thrilled to be here. I follow you all the time, and Jessica Rose too. Great fan of hers.
Great. So it's what? It's about 1:30 or something in the morning?
Yes. Yeah, I'm a night owl. This is fine. I'm at my age, I'm awake half the night anyway.
Okay. Well, Rosemary, tell us what's going on over there. So we know there's been a vax burst, which is hugely exciting. And you've got something called Forest of the Fallen. Talk to us about what is that?
Well, Forest of the Fallen is an installation we've been putting in on the northern beaches of Sydney, although there are other chapters around Australia, but ours is particularly frequent. We've got a great crew of people, and we've basically done it every week now for the last 2.5 years. It's very confronting and very moving because you don't have to say anything. People just walk through the forest and read the stories. It has so many benefits because rather than confronting people with dialogue and statistics and data, they simply identify different people who've taken the variety of COVID vaccinations. And we've had many cases where people have been gaslit by their doctors and told that the stroke or whatever that has happened to them subsequent to taking these is nothing to do with the COVID vaccination. But when they read the flags and realise there are so many people with the identical adverse event, they start thinking more about it, and it opens a conversation and dialogue.
Now, is this for COVID or is it all vaccinations?
Well, the Forest of the Fallen is particularly for COVID, but obviously the Vax bus covers everything. But the thing I've found very advantageous about doing the forest is being on the beaches. All the families come down and take the children to the beach, of course. So it opens the conversation to discuss childhood vaccines, which, again, I'm very passionate about. I'm a very, very staunch anti-vaxxer. I just can't stand the thought of pumping babies full of these dreadful things. And I'm able to break open the conversation with young parents because of a situation that I'm very familiar with, people I know whose little girl had a very bad she had a cardiac arrest after a DTP. Usually when I start talking about it, it makes me cry. So people become quite sympathetic and open to listening to me. And being a grandmother, I just love babies. So I really do find that it gets through to people. And when many of them have become open to questioning vaccination because COVID here was such an unmitigated disaster, our agencies have behaved so badly. Our TGA is 96% funded by Big Pharma, so you know whose side they're on. In fact, even at a court case recently with Melissa McCann, it was last December, the representative for the TGA said that they owed no duty of care to Australians. So it begs the question, why have we got them at all? So I can talk like this with people when they stop and begin asking questions. But the people now, after doing this for 2.5 years, there's been a marked change. People will come up and say, thank you so much. I don't really want to give an interview, but my sister got MS or something ghastly happened. I always ask whether they have reported their injury or their adverse reaction. But our DAEN here in Australia has said there have been 141,000 reported adverse events. But of course, our TGA doesn't recognise that. They seem to have no connection with the DAEN program. There have been over 1,000 deaths reported to that institution. But of course, the underreporting is massive. And even if you make it only at 3% underreporting, that means we've had 35,000 deaths, probably, if not more.
And so what is your ultimate goal here? I mean, it's a stupid question because I'm pretty sure it's the same ultimate goal that I've got. But anyway, talk about that.
Well, we really would. Well, personally, I do this because I want to shame the medical profession into admitting what they've done. And only once that has happened, of course, the people who've been victims of these shocking injections, all of them, will be able to say, now I've got a doctor's certificate saying that this was caused by a vaccine. I mean, one of the young girls I know very well, she's 22 now, she was vaccinated at 19, ended up collapsed outside the Northern Beaches Hospital in the gutter, having a serious heart problem. And $25,000 later, she's finally got the doctors to say, oh, yes, well, it probably was that Pfizer injection, as it happened on the night of the injection. I think we probably can say that was what caused it. I mean, if it wasn't so diabolical, you could almost think it was comical. But, the stories I hear, there's another story I like to tell people about. Lovely young man I met, he was about 35, and he gave me an interview. He was telling me how after his second Pfizer injection, his eyesight just completely went crazy. He couldn't drive back from the pharmacy. So he rang for his girlfriend to come and collect him. They took him straight to hospital. And he said, I had a Pfizer injection 20 minutes ago. Could it possibly be that? And the doctors just scoffed at him and said, oh, couldn't possibly be that, but it does look like you might have had a stroke. It's almost comical to think that they can be so obtuse. But the only people now who I end up having, well, I try not to have adversarial conversations at the forest because it's actually about a quiet commemoration more than anything. But the only ones I do end up arguing with are medical people who often are very hostile and very aggressive and completely unable to think that anything could be wrong with the holy grail vaccination. It's just beyond me when there's so much evidence now, beyond me.
Rosemary, I agree with you. The real aggressors that we had on the bus as well were from the medical profession. We had some great people from the medical profession, but they are so aggressive, almost violent.
Yes, they take it incredibly personally. Well, the Vaxxed bus is a slightly different thing. But one thing I will say about the Forest of the Fallen, every weekend we arrive unannounced. We don't advertise that we're going there. And every weekend I would have between 6 and 10 people who'll come and say to me, I've had a problem, or someone I know or one of my family have had a problem, and we believe it was the vaccine, but the doctors won't admit it. Now, what does that tell us? Not rare and not safe and only effective in hurting people.
Well, Rosemary, I think you're doing an amazing job, and I think it's wonderful what you're doing. I hope one day to walk through your Forest of the Fallen and just, because these are people. Every flag that you've got up there is a human being. It's somebody who's been hurt or killed by these shots. So it's like a memorial. It's actually very moving. And so thank you.
It is. It is moving.
Let's have a quick look at that Vaxxed bus for a second. It's incredible how it's like our Vaxxed bus.
Oh, funny that. Yes, we've imitated you completely.
Well, we did work with AVN. We love AVN, by the way. Everybody, you need to be following AVN, and you follow them at avn.org.au. They're an amazing organisation. They helped me enormously when Australia threw me out of the country for 3 years. They're our friends, and so please do follow them, everyone. And Rosemary, we can catch up with your Forest of the Fallen there as well.
Well, I like to plant the forest near the bus, and it brings people over. They start talking, and then they'll come on the bus and give interviews, which has worked very well. We've got an exciting one coming up. We're finishing in Bowral. We have a very good friend in Bowral, Dr. Philip Altman, who's been very outspoken about the vaccines. He's a great friend of ours, and he's looking after us that day. We're doing interviews, and that night there's not quite a reception, but there's a big meeting for a libertarian group where we'll be speaking. Well, Anita Halfmeister and I'll be speaking to lots of people there. Apparently, they're very, very keen to meet us. So the word is spreading. People are supportive. When we drive the bus around, we get toots and waves and people saying thank you. So I think we're getting somewhere finally after all the work that you guys have put into it and all the work that Meryl Dorey and our team here have done. I'm a relative newcomer to this. Those ones are the old guard. You're the old guard, and I admire you all so much.
So old. I love Meryl, love Anita, love all that you're doing out there, and good. There are the new Vaxxed bus dates, everybody. Jessica Rose putting in the chat here. She's a huge fan, and big love to you, Rosemary. So we're all behind you. And thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here so early. Please go and get some sleep.
I will. All right, then. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Love from everyone in Australia to you.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone, I'm going to hand this show over to Miriam Eckenfels.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another EMR and wireless update. Today we're going to talk, surprise, surprise, again with our very own lead litigator, Scott McCollough, about one of his favorite subjects, actually, privacy and the potential of wireless technology to develop into a digital prison. Welcome, Scott.
Hello, everyone.
But first, let's watch a brief video together. It's all about the privacy and surveillance risks of 5G and wireless technology more broadly, and then we can use that as a basis for our discussion after.
We've all heard about 5G and its potential to transform our lives forever. But what is 5G really about? Is there more to the story? Let's see what mainstream experts and the World Economic Forum have to say about it.
You have to keep in mind that more or less everything will change.
It will be machines talking to machines, IoT or Internet of Things.
Just imagine a new scenario where everything is connected. Do we need traffic lights? We don't need traffic lights. You just speak and say, I'm going home. The network knows where your home is. The network knows where all the cars and the traffic is.
Right now, if someone's having a heart attack, there's no way of sensing that. 5G and beyond will allow the early detection well before you even feel the symptoms.
5G is going to underpin the digital economy in many countries, and that's why it's really important that we get these enabling conditions right.
If you put a VR lab in a school, the students can explore the pyramids of Egypt or even the solar system.
Sounds promising, doesn't it? Or is there another side to the story?
Hackers were able to bring down some of the world's biggest websites. It's believed a virus harnessed the power of hundreds of thousands of internet-connected cameras, kettles, and thermostats to target sites in America and Europe.
Watched a self-driving Tesla vehicle cause an 8-vehicle crash on the San Francisco Bay Bridge.
Not just pacemakers, all sorts of medical devices run wirelessly off computer networks. And even though many of these devices are lifesavers or life supporters, they are surprisingly unprotected against cyber attack.
If you think about the benefits of digital money, so you can have programmability, units of central bank currency with expiry dates, where the government decides that units of central bank money can be used to purchase some things, but not other things that it deems less desirable.
Is 5G really an opportunity for transformation or the building blocks of a digital prison? You decide.
We all know, but still pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt our society as a whole.
When somebody says, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear, they're misleading you, they're deceiving you, they're disempowering you. Because privacy isn't about something to hide, it's about something to protect. Privacy is the right to the self, right? Privacy is the right to a free mind. Privacy is the foundation of all other rights.
CHD's electromagnetic radiation and wireless team is fighting back against involuntary radiation exposure from wireless tech and the privacy invasion that comes with it.
Yeah, I just love this video. It's so great to hear it in their own words. And shout out to our marketing department and our videographer for putting this together. Scott, do you have any follow-up thoughts you want to share?
Everybody should pay real attention to what Edward Snowden said. You can have all the thoughts you want about the fact that he was exposing state secrets, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But what he basically said is we all need to be concerned about our own privacy. privacy isn't just keeping secrets. What it represents is each individual's zone of autonomy. If they take your privacy away, they're taking away individual choice, individual autonomy, your right to determine how you will conduct your own affairs and that of your family and everything else. It's not that we're trying to keep secrets. It's that we're trying to keep people out of our lives and making decisions for us against our will.
Right. And it's so interesting when we think about privacy and wireless technology and how this all bands together. So I want to sort of like tie it into the work we are doing because last week we spoke about the FCC's new proposed rulemakings and how if they actually do become rules or adopted, they would essentially plaster the entire country with cell towers, small cells, and other wireless and 5G infrastructure, which is all sort of like part of this 5G rollout, right? Of bringing, you know, wireless technology close to the end user and of essentially developing this mesh network. And as I mentioned last week, and we discussed that these new proposed rules would essentially cut out local communities so that they can put in this infrastructure without consent, or there's really not much that anyone can do. We're just all going to be living next to a cell tower and in this mesh network of wireless infrastructure. But we didn't really talk about the consequences that this would have for people's privacy and how this infrastructure that we are trying to stop or make more sensible really lays the groundwork for what we've seen in the video, the Internet of Things and the surveillance state, and how this essentially is a gateway to a digital prison that, we and also Catherine Austin Fitts oftentimes speak about. So, Scott, with that in mind, tell us why the FCC is really doing this and why does the FCC need such an unprecedented expansion of its authority?
Well, first of all, I want everybody to think about this because it's really basic, but a lot of folks miss it. Digital ID, where is it held? Digital money, where is it held? It's held in your wireless device. In order for all of what we call the control grid to work, there has to be a wireless network that is used to handle all of, and I'll call them transactions, that are involved. And it's not just in cyberspace. It has very direct effects in what I call meat space or the physical world as well. But what is necessary for that to happen? Well, in the old days with cell phone technology, you would have, very big, large macro towers, very tall, 300 feet or so, could handle phone calls very easily from great distances. But things like artificial intelligence, things like streaming video over mobile devices, they require much more individual capacity in the aggregate than a macro tower can usually handle. So what the carriers have to do is what we call densify their network. They have to put more towers out there and much closer to people using higher frequencies that are capable of having more energy and therefore more throughput. So in order for everything that the FCC says it wants to work, they basically got to set in place a mechanism to put cell towers, probably what we call small cells, very, very close to people in homes and schools, perhaps every 700 to 1,000 feet. That is the only way that 5G and the coming generations will actually be able to accomplish everything they say is good. And of course, they always ignore the downside.
Right. And so you mentioned a little bit about the AI components that, that's all sort of like fairly new. It just exploded over the last year. But these new proposed rules actually have, they talk about AI and tell us a little bit about what they say about it and why it is important and why it will sort of like accelerate, this digital prison that we're talking about.
The 5G protocols and 6G, which is still in development, already have the capability to do a lot of things. They can look into the content of your communications. People may not realize that 24/7, your digital device is communicating a lot of information back to the network. It's telling the network how strong the signal is. It's telling it how well it is receiving. It is giving positioning information. It's giving identification information. And then, of course, there is a content of your communications, which, using deep packet inspection, the network also gets to see many of the times, even when you're using a private network. The big thing about artificial intelligence is that this ton of information that's being provided, it's so much that it could not until now really be processed or interpolated or acted upon in anything close to real time. They can capture it and store it and use it later. But now with AI, they can see it, they can think about it using artificial intelligence tools and act on it in real time. So what you will have then with AI is the immediate ability to, for example, recognize if maybe you send a text to someone that has a prohibited word, or if you are located somewhere the network might think you're not supposed to be, and immediately act to deny network resources. They could turn off your phone. They could shut down your ability to send and receive phone calls or get data. Indeed, as you saw earlier, all of this is interconnected. Everything is going to be connected with each other in some fashion. If you happen to be outside your permitted zone, or you have bought too much gasoline or too much meat, they can actually almost immediately turn off your digital wallet, deny you the ability to do it. If they don't want you to go into a particular place, they see you approaching a door to a store they don't think you need to go into, they can actually, will be able to, because of the Internet of Things, tell the door to not open for you. They can turn off your car under some of the proposals these days, force you in many different ways to go back to where you're supposed to be. The wireless network is going to be the infrastructure that allows complete control not only of your virtual life, but also your physical life. It is indeed a digital prison.
Right. And I think it's really, really important for people to understand that, yes, we focus a lot on the health and environmental impact of the radiation that is coming from cell towers, and are fighting the infrastructure or trying to place them in spots where they cause a little less harm, or away from schools, away from homes, away from playgrounds. But it's not just that, right? We are very concerned about the privacy impact of these newer networks, and the infrastructure that we are talking about really lays the basis for everything that you just mentioned, which is really, really scary. And then sort of like to think about that, the FCC, as this captured federal agency, is now essentially on the way to grab all of the power, centralize the entire process of the infrastructure rollout and densification, while at the same time taking democratic and constitutional rights away from individuals and communities and states and municipalities. It is scary, it is frightening, and it is really something that everybody should pay attention to, whether you care about the environment, whether you care about health, whether you care about privacy. This is for you. And so we cannot stress this enough. So Scott, looking at these new proposed rules, what constitutional right do they violate?
I want to mention something else because it flows into my answer. The way that they are designing the network and the capabilities of 5 and soon 6G, it will impact people who have even chosen to not have a cell phone. Modern technology now is such that a transmitter or an antenna can actually sense when something is within its area. And with AI, once again, it will soon be able to employ things like facial recognition or other kinds of identifying characteristics to know who you are and where you are, even if you're not carrying a mobile device. So we need to be really, really worried about this densification. Now, the FCC speaks in a lot of code, but if you read what they say about AI, and I'm going to point everyone, maybe you can pull it up and look at it, paragraph 77 and 78, they seek comment on the way AI tools are or may be used in communications network to provide higher quality service and ensure the efficient and intensive use of the spectrum. And they want people to, primarily the wireless industry, to tell them how these many of the state actions, which for the most part are trying to protect privacy and autonomy, how these state and local rules may have the effect of impeding the advancement of telecommunications and wireless services, how it may inhibit or limit providers' ability to use AI tools to improve the efficiency and quality of covered service. Pay attention to those words: efficient, intensive, quality. Now that sounds good. We all want better phone service, of course. But what they're really saying is they need to be more efficient about and more intensively use the spectrum to provide what they call quality of service. But a substantial portion of that is, again, implementation of the control grid. Okay, what constitutional flaws do we see? Well, first of all, I think that many of the things that the commission is proposing to do or asking folks if it should do really just don't fall within the Communications Act. It doesn't say that the commission has power over AI. It doesn't say that. And everybody needs to remember that just a little over a year ago, the Supreme Court took away what we call Chevron deference. And whereas before a court might have deferred to the commission's expansive reading of its statute, now the courts will actually exercise a lot more independent judgment about what the statute says and does and what it means. I don't think that the Communications Act gives the FCC the kind of powers that it's trying to grab here. Second, this is kind of wonky, and I won't get into all those specifics, but there's some parts in there where they're just not using the right procedure under the Administrative Procedure Act. Let's get to the Constitution. A minute ago, I mentioned that one of the things these networks can do now is actually affect people's lives even if they don't have a device. Well, there's some privacy implications within the Fifth Amendment. There's some property invasion protections within the Fifth Amendment. There's some health protections within the Fifth Amendment. And what they are basically proposing to do is say, we have the right to decide where this stuff goes, how it operates, and no local jurisdiction and no state can really even touch it. That means that many of the protections that have been put in place at the local level through, among other things, local zoning, will be stripped away. What the commission wants is to decide these issues up there in Washington so as to keep the public from having any rights to participate in these things that directly affect them. If you think about it, if there's a tower right next to your property, it is projecting energy, a physical force across your property. Yet nobody's asking you for permission. In my mind, that's a Fifth Amendment problem. Second, the commission wants to affect people's lives directly, take away traditional rights, whether they be autonomy or property rights. They want to deprive this of every individual so that they can give complete control to the network and then ultimately the government. Well, usually that's the sort of thing that can only be done after a jury trial under the Seventh Amendment. But yet the commission thinks that it can just take everybody's property rights, determine their fate at an administrative level, even without a hearing. I'm sorry, I think the Seventh Amendment's a problem. There's still the residual rights that are retained within the Ninth and 10th Amendment. What those say is that all the rights not expressly conferred to the federal government under the Constitution reside with the people or with the states. And again, this is a big power grab. There's some separation of powers issues. Again, this is an administrative agency. And traditionally, the commission has not been allowed to decide what we call private disputes, in part because of the Seventh Amendment. Yet, this is exactly what they are proposing to do here, decide a host of private rights with minimal process. I think there's a separation of powers problem. The Communications Act is authorized, premised on the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. Their powers can reach only as far as the Commerce Clause does. The Commerce Clause is about interstate commerce. But as we learned in the ACA case several years ago, the federal government cannot compel people to engage in interstate commerce. If you engage in interstate commerce, well, then you may be subject to some of the rules. But for people who have tried to wipe wireless out of their lives, have consciously chosen to not engage in interstate commerce, the FCC can't touch them, in my opinion. And there's a huge Commerce Clause overreach here. Those are some of the underlying statutory, procedural, and constitutional things we're going to be talking about.
Right. Thank you for that. That was very comprehensive. I think to sort of like bring it back into layman's terms and to drive the point home, if these rules become law, we are going to see cell towers everywhere, and everybody might be at risk of waking up next to a cell tower, because if the notice requirements go away, if the public participation rights go away, then you might only learn of a tower when it's actually being constructed. And while we spoke about the involuntary exposure to radiation and the health impact and the privacy impact, there's also much broader impact on community character, on property values, on fire and safety, on just this basic notion that we get to have some sort of say how the community we live in looks like, and how does it feel like, and what type of infrastructure we place there. So in the last couple minutes or so, Scott, what can people do? What should they be doing to stop this and to support our efforts? And I will say before you go that we will be running an action alert, and we will be sending out emails to everybody who is on the CHD email list. So if that is not you yet, then absolutely sign up on childrenshealthdefense.org or on 704nomore.org to the email list, so you can receive action items when we tell you exactly who to call, what to do, where to sign, who to talk to, because it is that important.
Yeah, even if you may not be persuaded that there are health and environmental risks from electromagnetic radiation, let's just face up to the fact. Look at the pictures on the screen. These things are ugly. You don't want one of them in your backyard. Nobody does. Traditionally, local jurisdictions have been in charge of deciding where things go based on things like whether it fits in with the character of the community. They work to try to reduce visual impacts to treasured viewpoints or treasured view sheds, maybe a look of the ocean or a look of a mountain or a lake. They're concerned about impact on adjoining property values. Will this reduce the property value of an abutting property owner? The FCC wants to strip all of that away. It wants to basically say that all of these traditional local concerns no longer apply. If it's going to slow down the deployment of ubiquitous wireless, the FCC's desire to put a transmitter right outside your child's bedroom, then that is an effective prohibition of service using the statutory term, and it is therefore preempted. I'm sorry, there's supposed to be a balance between national, state, and local power, and the commission is just really overreaching. Folks need to talk to their local and state and federal representatives, write letters, tell them to push back against this, once again, this attempt to overreach and take away people's rights. Yes, sign up for our newsletters. We will be writing comments, and we're going to be asking people to sign on. Donate to CHD. There will be a lot to do here in the coming month or so, but you need to be aware of this. You need to make sure that folks that are your elected representatives, your zoning authorities are all aware of this. They have some associations which will be filing comments. You need to encourage your local folks there to join up with others to resist this federal attempt to just take away traditional local zoning authority.
Right. And particularly this is important because, as we mentioned and keep mentioning, the FCC is the poster child of a captured agency. So this is essentially the wireless industry grabbing the power and pushing for it, and we must fight back. Thank you so much, Scott, for joining me again today. It's a pleasure as always. For our viewers, please follow us on social media. We are at Stop 5G Near Me and at 704 No More on all major platforms. Thank you for joining us today. And now stay tuned for the People Study story of the day.
Thank you so much for talking to us. Great to hear from Dad as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So, do you want to tell us the story of Evan?
Sure. Evan was a typical happy child, and about, normal developing, hitting all the milestones. At about 14 months of age, he had the measles, mumps, and rubella, and chickenpox vaccines. And immediately after that, he had 104-degree temperature. He had a rash and diarrhea and things like that. And our doctor told us to give him some Tylenol, and that was just common, and to wait it out. And a month or two afterwards, we started knowing him starting to withdraw, lose some of his speech. He was already saying "mama" and "dada."
Yeah, what was he like before? Describe him before the MMR vaccine.
Very typical, happy kid, interactive as far as with his older brother, and was able to say 4 or 5 words, basic words, things like that, and very normal developing. So after that, he started losing speech and being more withdrawn and doing things like pacing back and forth. We thought we had no idea at the time what that meant, but just pacing back and forth over a 5-foot span. Started toe walking, and he's still doing that to this day.
And how old is he now to this day?
He is 13 years old.
He's tall, isn't he?
Very tall.
13 years old, and what are the issues that he has today? What are you living with?
A lot of different things. He tends to...
Does he speak?
He has very limited language. That's one of the frustrating things about our son. He has, which makes it very difficult for times when he has pain, and can't indicate that to us. He still toe walks.
He's nervous to walk in here today, isn't he?
He has some apprehension issues. He does have gut issues as well, tending to have a lot of regurgitation issues and digestion issues. So problems with the elopement as well. He doesn't escape as much as he used to, but there are times when he will try to, if the opportunity is there, just try to wander off.
So when you took him in for the MMR, did you have any reason to question?
No, not at all. We both my wife and I are physical therapists, and we're brought up in the traditional medical model of evidence-based practice, and doctors know best, and we all have vaccinations, so it must be what we need to do. We never questioned the fact that why they were all put together, or whether or not we needed certain vaccinations at certain ages.
And afterwards, when he became so sick, you clearly went back to the same pediatrician?
We went back to the same pediatrician for a short while, and then we started, as we gained more knowledge of what was going on with Evan, we looked for a different...
But what did your pediatrician say when you said he's sick?
That it was, as they typically say, a phase that they might be able to grow out of. One of those frustrating things, don't worry about it, your kid will grow out of it.
Well, I'm really sorry that happened to Evan. And we're going to sign Evan's name.
Absolutely.
On the bus.
We can't say enough how much we've watched the film. My wife and I are very much, I say fans, but appreciative of all that's being done for this to speak up, so that there are other families out there who are just starting off and might have kids that they're wondering what to do. And it's okay. It's not like I said before, it's not just about no vaccines, it's about safe vaccines. And I think right now in this world there's too much of a, or less of a concern of not of the children, more so than what's best as far as capitalism is concerned. And it's a very frustrating thing to see that it seems like there's more of a concern, or less of a concern for the kids as individuals in this day and age. And I'm so appreciative that this is here to get that voice out, so that maybe other families don't have to go through the things we've had to go through with our son.
I mean, our children are living proof that vaccines are not safe.
And even so, we have two other young children, and they're non-vaccinated.
And they're wonderful. I saw them.
And they're wonderful, great kids, and until these things get fixed, as far as what we need to know, just knowing the truth. It's not about this vaccine or that vaccine. It's knowing about what's safe and what the actual truth is. Just let the truth come out. That's all we ask.
Thank you. We so appreciate it.
Thank
I'm just going to talk. If you're not in a rush, I'm just going to chat here, and then we'll go out to the bus and we'll sign Evan's name. And I want everyone to meet Evan if I can.
I'll
you can allow me.
I'll try to go get it.
Number 4, yeah. I already put the name on. You're okay. They did it. Okay. You gonna get a picture with you?
Yeah, of course. Can I get someone to hold that?
Some 40 to 70% of mothers who have children with autism believe that their child was injured by a vaccine. We should be listening to these mothers. We will perform the studies that should have been performed 25 years ago.
This is the most important thing. There's nothing more important than that.
This guy is staking his presidency on ending the autism epidemic, and he talked about vaccines.
We want no mercury in the vaccine. We want no aluminum in the vaccine.
We didn't know if he was actually going to touch on vaccines, and he was all over it.
There's no reason to give a baby that's almost just born hepatitis B.
He basically gave parents permission not to vaccinate their kids, and definitely not to take Tylenol.
We now have data we cannot ignore. There is a causal relationship between prenatal acetaminophen use and neurodevelopmental disorders of ADHD and autism spectrum disorder.
The truth is, vaccine injuries are real and they've been ignored.
Society does not want to acknowledge vaccine injury, period.
These childhood vaccinations, the people of America are telling us they are not safe and effective. We are seriously concerned at Children's Health Defense about the disinformation and misinformation out there.
The government has decided that this particular industry doesn't have to be liable to anybody.
There's only 10% of children are complying with the CDC's recommendation on COVID boosters.
A record number of kindergartners didn't get at least one state-mandated vaccine.
And the number of exemptions is up.
Vaccination rates in children start to drop once again.
A 16-year-old girl wins in court after the public school system denied her medical vaccine exemption.
The nonprofit Children's Health Defense has championed her case.
Sarah Doe is going to be going to school.
Health and Human Services is reestablishing the task force on safer childhood vaccines. This comes after a lawsuit from an advocacy group formerly led by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.